Welcome to Live Rostrum News Agency. Making news, breaking news. Addressing the paradigms of all issues, national and international, in a radically different to the conventional way. We lean directly on citizens of the world for our news source. This is disseminated on almost real time to the mass media of the world.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim, viewers. We are back with our program, Dr. Abid Rao at Live Rostrum. As we had promised to you earlier, we will bring before you those personalities, those subjects which relate to all of us and our problems, and the people who have some solutions for these problems. Economy of any individual, any community, any country is the most vital to its survival. All languages contain some phrases. In Punjabi they say, "Jinna de kar dane, unna de kamle vi siane." In English they say, "Money makes the mayor go." And in so many other languages, I mean in the Russian, they go to the extent of saying that all your reflections, your behaviors depends upon your economic strength or background. The stronger is it be, the better would be your reaction to any given situation of pleasure or adversity. So without much ado, let me introduce to you my personality of today, Dr. Ishrat Hussain. Sir, thank you very much for coming to our show on such a short notice. And in fact, he needs no introduction. Very briefly, I will tell you that he is a person with international standing. He's worked for 20 years with the World Bank, 1979 to 99, and then he was requested by the government then to come and take over the State Bank of Pakistan, where he served 2 terms of 3 years each, and then he went into another very important assignment of heading the IBA, the Institute of Business Administration in Karachi, another institution of world repute. Sir, welcome to our show. Initially, we would like to ask you about your experiences as Governor State Bank. We all know about it, but too little to know its exact character. That you are, as a state bank, are the advisory body to the government of Pakistan on finance management, on commerce, on trade, or you also have some authority as a policeman to make sure that government doesn't violate your limitations?
We're neither an advisory body nor a policeman. We have our statutory independence as the central bank of any country in the world, which is to ensure the monetary, price and financial stability in a country. So the monetary policy is done by the State Bank and the fiscal policy is done by the Ministry of Finance. So that's a division of work. There is an act of the Parliament which describes the mandate, the powers, the objectives of the State Bank of Pakistan. But in economics, everything is interrelated. You cannot have a fiscal policy independent of the monetary policy, nor can you have a monetary policy independent of fiscal policy. So there is a lot of interaction between the Ministry of Finance and the State Bank of Pakistan because they have to work together. There's a myth about the so-called independence. We're not independent of the government, we are independent within the government. And the Parliament, which is elected by the people of Pakistan, is the body which controls us, which controls the Ministry of Finance, which sets the targets, which sets the goals for economic policy. We cannot make the policy ourselves, but we implement those policies. So that is the role of the central bank.
Sir, so many times we read in the papers that the government is printing currency beyond the allowable limits of State Bank of Pakistan. And the domestic borrowing also continues. I mean, just today I was reading in the paper that in the last 9 months, the present government has borrowed over 1 trillion rupees. In this case, what role should the State Bank play?
Borrowing is not a bad thing.
Sir.
Because there are ways in which you borrow, invest that amount of money, earn a larger return than the interest rate. For example, as an individual, you borrow from a bank at 10% interest rate, but you invest in a business and you get a 15% return. So you get 10% back to the state, to the bank, and 5% is your income. Similarly, the countries all over the world have borrowed in order to expand the economy, to earn. So in our country, there is seen to be an obsession that debt, borrowing, these are dirty words, but that's not the case. Economic engine doesn't act without borrowing. In capitalistic economies, this is the main vehicle through which income is generated, wealth is generated, the standard of living is improved. What is happening in Pakistan is that we are substituting our efforts to mobilize resources through taxation and
with domestic borrowing
and going to the banks. This is all right in a short-term phenomena, but in the long term, if you do not mobilize the taxes, then you would not have the capacity to repay these loans. So that is the connection. The connection is that we borrowed in 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, but we expanded our economy from 3% economic growth rate to 7.5% growth rate. We had enough resources to repay those loans with the interest and have surpluses which we invested. So that is what the concern should be, whether you have the capacity to repay the loan. Borrowing itself is not such a bad thing.
Sir,
So
agreed. Agreed. But the government, if you find out, if you feel that is not managing the borrowed money properly, it's being wasted or used elsewhere, which is non-productive, should State Bank have a say in that or preventing the further borrowing, sir?
In 9 months, I haven't heard any project or any scam or scandal where we have evidence that the money has been wasted or has been stolen or has been taken away. So I cannot actually...
Not 9 months, I mean in generic sense.
You were talking of the borrowing by the present government.
Yes.
So I'm just answering that question. If there were leakages, if there were corruption taking place, then you were absolutely right. Then that borrowing is toxic. That borrowing is inimical for the country. But if it is being used for good purposes, I don't see any problem with that.
Sir, the State Bank determines the interest rate. Every year we hear a new interest rate being announced. This is directly linked with the inflation in the society because if unwisely fixed, it can increase inflation. Second, it has a direct impact on the savings of that nation. In the region, for last, say, 25 years, if you take the figures, Pakistani nation as a whole, we save less than India, Sri Lanka, or some other countries in the region, sir. Can you tell us why, sir?
The nominal interest rate is immaterial. It is the real interest rate which is important. So in my time, the inflation rate was 3%. The interest rate, nominal terms, was 4%. In real terms, it was 1%. Today, the inflation is 10%. The discount rate or the interest rate is 11%. It's still the real interest rate. People take the nominal interest rates, which is immaterial. Economic allocation takes place on the real interest rate, not on the nominal interest rate. So higher is the inflation, the higher is going to be the interest rate. So the State Bank looks at the inflation numbers and then decides on interest rate. It's not the other way around, that you take the interest rate and then decides the inflation.
But otherwise, the saving rate of Pakistani nation,
Because we are a consuming country. When I was in Washington, all my Indian friends were living in a very modest houses with an old cars, but sending their children to the topmost private schools, which were very expensive. And all of us were living in palatial houses, driving BMWs and Mercedes-Benz, and sending our children to the public schools. So your priorities are quite obvious.
as a nation. Sir, we will take a short break and we'll continue from here. Viewers, please don't go away. We'll come back soon on this.